This is how you write new and interesting stories about Superman and his world. In a day and age where we have had no shortage of Superman in live action, on TV, and in cartoon form, this is interesting. You give him compelling stories about his insecurities and his relationships with other people. It doesn't matter how strong you are, if your girlfriend breaks your heart, it's gonna hurt, but I digress. Let me also start by saying this version of the DC Universe is very different from other iterations that we've seen. Obviously, the art style is very anime inspired, but more than that, the designs feel distinctly anime. The characters are not carbon copies, but their essence is there. Clark wants to help people and protect the world. Lois is a young journalist who wants to climb her way to the top. Jimmy is actually Clark's best friend, but also has his own story and agency. Spoilers, this season does have a lot more Lex Luthor, Amanda Waller, Deathstroke, Brainiac, and Supergirl, but let's be clear, they are not carbon copies from the comics. They are very unique takes on these characters. And if you can let it go, that they're not the characters that you imagine, that you already know, you'll find some interesting interactions along the way, along with a lot of great character arcs. The cast is growing, but it never feels like anyone really gets lost, like they're only building. They have a solid foundation from season 1, and dare I say, season 2 elevates it. So let's start from the top. Lois and Clark are dating as their first Valentine's Day comes up, and they're not really sure what to do with one another. We have Alex, not really sure what to do with himself until Jimmy Olsen gives him a pep talk that both he, Superman, and the world will come to regret. In the Arctic, the trio discover Clark's ship, and Clark finally has the chance to bond with his ghost dad while learning that there is another person out there like him. Lois is obviously hesitant to call over another Kryptonian to Earth, but Clark, well, he's alone. Not for the lack of love, but who can even understand what it's like what he's going through internally. Lois and Clark are set to rescue her father from the prison when it's discovered that Waller is experimenting on inmates who can't afford to post bail. Hey Waller, thanks so much for life, liberty, but you're a fucking hypocrite, right? Anyway, Superman is able to save the day because, duh. But he's also able to retrieve the beacon so that he can call his family member. Lois is still against the idea, so Clark hides that from her. Up next, we have two great ideas culminating into the bigger picture down the road. We're introduced to John Henry Irons, aka Steel, and the Metallo Project. Now, in universe, the Metallo Project isn't one man, but instead an army of robots meant for, and I'm using quotation marks here, peace. Much in the same way that nukes are meant for peace. Silas Stone, aka Cyborg's daddy, is also present, and both men try to tell people about the defects and the potential destruction of the Metallos, but both men are silenced. Superman and Steel do manage to save the day in the end, with Superman absorbing the sun's power while Irons proves that he can be a real hero. The episode ends with Amertek, who owns the Metallos and Steel's suit, being bought by one Alexander Q. Luthor, funded by, of course, the American taxpayers. I think episode 4 is a pretty Lois-heavy episode because it focuses on the strained relationship she has with her father, while it also shows Jimmy and Clark just hanging out, mostly. On one end, I appreciate them diving deep into Lois' backstory, something that's very rarely, if ever, explored. It builds her, and honestly, it's a smart thing that adds up to making a character likable. Now we understand a little more the strained relationship between her and her dad. On the other side of the coin, Jimmy is invited to speak as a friend of Superman, but is ambushed into a debate by Lex Luthor, which is, let's be honest, that is some bullshit he would pull. I want to say Lex wins the debate when he says that Earth is for Earthlings. Yeah, the show is not very subtle with its political undertones, and it shows, but again, I'm not against it. While in other places this might feel like pandering, this show does a good job of sprinkling in discussions on human rights without making it feel like it's patronizing us. This is when the show seemingly ramps up by hitting at Clark's insecurities. He isn't human and fears rejection for a secret he's kept forever. When he goes to talk to Lois, he hears something vastly out of context that makes him feel like Lois doesn't care for him. In a moment of desperation, he uses the beacon to call his family member. We then get a B-plot that's meant to show that Superman and Clark are different people, but in reality, It mounts up to Lois being insecure about their relationship and her relationship to Clark, feeling like she's not good enough. She breaks up with him, while Jimmy, Firebird, and Kara go out on a date, and let me be honest, this date was pretty cute. The episode culminates in Kara fighting and knocking out Superman, being very clear he's on the defensive, he does not want to fight her. And well, yeah, she kidnaps him and takes him to Brainiac. It's a season of two halves. While the first half sets up a lot, the second half straight up pays off a lot of these storylines. Firstly, Kara and Kal bond over their powers and the enjoyment of their cultures. Clark is able to have a snowball fight in space against someone that can match him, while Kara is eager to share her world. Unfortunately, that's when things become to get unsettling. Kara is presented as a warrior of Krypton, the Empire. It's a very different backstory, but I'm really into it. She's been spoon-fed propaganda her whole life, and has basically been brainwashed by her father, Brainiac. Even when her morals start to kick in, he has taken control of her mind to destroy worlds he deems as unworthy. His ultimate plan is to take over Superman's mind and download his consciousness into Clark's body. I personally like the redesigns and the new origins and backstories for Brainiac and Kara. The new costumes are solid, and Brainiac's voice actor has the right amount of menace and belittling to both Clark and Kara. Meanwhile, Lois and Jimmy form a team and plan to break into Star Labs/LexCorp to steal a ship that can save Clark in space. It's a fun episode that shows that Jimmy and Lois are their own characters that are willing to go the extra mile to save Superman. There's some cringe dialogue in this episode with the whole love isn't for cowards shtick. It actually did make my skin crawl, but if I need to sit through some cringe in order to enjoy a lovely show, well, I guess I'm in. It's at this point that we start the third act of what could really be considered a long movie. Kara, having now been expelled from Brainiac, teams with Lois and Jimmy to try and save a now brainwashed Clark Kent. I like the redesigned Black Mercy as well as the kinds of older comics like The Man Who Has Everything. This show knows its lore and pays homage without pandering, and I'm here for it. Lois enters Clark's mind to remind him of who he is, but not before Brainiac can successfully invade. Well, I'm going to say Earth, but really it kind of feels like only Metropolis is in danger. And it's at that point that multiple storylines come to clash and ramp up. Lois gets Clark free, but he and Kara are not enough to defeat Brainiac's forces alone. Additionally, we have Waller's team of Atomic Skull, Slade, and some other guy that gets one shot. Lex's drones are effective until Brainiac hacks them. Earth's forces are doomed until the cavalry arrive. It's very anime that your old enemies become your friends and allies, but again, I'm here for it. I'm willing to go with them on this. We see Lex for the coward that he is, and we have an all-out battle to defend Metropolis, not Earth. Not really. Kara and Clark are able to defeat Brainiac and take him into space, and here's where Kara really earns her costume, relieving herself of her oppressor and stepping into the role of a hero. This truly feels like a dueling story of Superman accepting who he is as an Earthling, with Kara freeing herself of her abuser. Together they stand up to Brainiac and defeat him, but not until Kara gets the kill, although she is scarred in the process. The show ends with a barbecue and a third season on the way. Look, there's a lot of cringe and some corny dialogue, but it's not all bad. This show does an amazing job of building up the relationships and friendships between Clark, Jimmy, Lois, and Kara, while introducing a larger cast of characters and cementing this version of Supergirl as something that should really be replicated in the movies, if I'm being honest. Outstanding work that frankly, I'm jealous of. My compliments to the writers who worked on this show and the animators. Thank you so very much for this show and so much more. This was a brave new version of a familiar story. An 8.5 out of 10 for me. But what did you think? Let us know down below what's your favorite moment from my adventures with Superman. Please let us know, and yeah, we'll catch you all next time. We'll see everybody.